Bulldog gardeners, it's so good to see you back in the school garden. The secret to a beautiful garden is the soil. That is why, once our cool season crops are done, we will take time out to care for our soil. Today, we are going to talk about the 3 main ways that we build healthy soil, which are composting, cover cropping, and mulching. And if you guess that all 3 of these things have something to do with adding organic matter to the soil, you're correct. There was a time in Oklahoma history when the lack of organic matter in farm soil allowed the wind to blow the soil away. We will talk about that time and what we learned from it that we practice in our garden today. All right, let's go. To care for our soil at the end of each season, we remove the old plants and we add finished compost to our beds. We do this to replace the nutrients that were used by our crops over the last season. In this case, by our winter crops. Gardeners like to say, we're building healthy soil. We say this because, believe it or not, garden soil is not just dirt. It has lots of amazing qualities that we gardeners must help to build and maintain. Soil that has compost in it holds together instead of crumbling into a fine sand. This is because the soil microbes have left behind gummy materials that help particles of soil stick together. It makes soil form clumps that bind tightly together. As the soil forms nice clumps, it also forms air pockets. They hold water when it is dry out and allow soil to drain when it rains a lot. These air pockets are wonderful for plant roots, worms, and soil critters. Compost helps soil have a perfect structure for a healthy garden. Let's go up to our composting area. Hi, Bulldog gardeners. I am here at our composting area to check in on our hot compost pile. Our compost pile, if you remember, we built last fall, and our compost pile is made out of organic materials. We had a few categories of organic materials. We had our greens and our browns, our different vegetable and fruit scraps, as well as straw, leaves, old plants from our garden. And when we layered all those up and built it, if you remember, it was probably about this tall. So that was last fall. Now this winter, we're coming through the winter, we're about to use our compost this spring. You can see that it has shrunk down quite a bit. That means our decomposers, our microbes, and our little organisms have been doing their job and recycling all of that organic matter into soil for us. Let me show you a little bit. It looks nothing like the fruit and vegetable peels and straw and grass clippings that we started with. It very much looks like good, rich soil that our garden will love. Fun composting, Bulldogs. Another way we make compost is by taking care of worms in a worm bin. Worms are wonderful decomposers, and the compost they make is great for plants. It's called vermicompost. And when you visit the garden soon, we will get to take a look inside this active worm bin. Why is compost from a pile or a worm bin so good for plants? One of the reasons is because it contains nitrogen that plants can absorb. What is nitrogen? It is the most common gas found in the Earth's atmosphere. Nitrogen is a necessary nutrient for plant growth and for all forms of life, including us. Nitrogen is constantly moving in a cycle. Even though plants need nitrogen, they cannot absorb it directly from the air. They need certain decomposers to fix it so that plants can absorb it. Once the bacteria has made the nitrogen ready for plants to use, we call that available nitrogen. like those which grew in our cover crop over the fall and winter are legumes. We grew cover crop here. Other famous legumes are beans. Peas and beans naturally attract a special bacteria to live on their roots, which are great at fixing nitrogen. When legumes are fixing nitrogen, there are little nodules on the roots that we can see. Because peas do this, gardeners plant them when they want to add available nitrogen to the soil. The soil in these containers just didn't seem like it was growing things that well last fall. So we decided over the winter to grow cover crop and try to build some soil health in our container area. I planted a lovely cover crop of peas and oats, and it grew all winter. Then when we had our very, very cold time in January, it died back, and that was perfect timing because it was time to cut all of that cover crop up and turn it into these containers. So we're helping to have a nice, healthy container garden here. And now we're going to plant more peas or legumes here in our container garden this spring. And that will help after our cover crop to continue to add more nitrogen to our soil, even while it produces a lovely crop for eating for us this spring as well. It's a win-win.
Looking around at our garden, you can see that even when we don't have anything planted, we try not to have bare soil. This is so we can keep our soil moist and protected from soil erosion. Erosion happens when soil is lost, either by being blown or washed away. Here in our garden, you will almost always see mulch or cover crops protecting the soil. When a garden bed has produced a lot of food for us, it has used up a lot of the organic matter and nutrients present in the soil. In order to recharge the soil, we let the bed rest by either mulching it or planting a cover crop. For example, bed 3 last winter, we grew garlic. Then, last spring, we planted tomatoes, which grew over the summer. In the fall, we planted a cover crop like we did in our container garden.
Let me show you what you do after the cover crop dies down to get things ready for spring. So after your cover crop has died back, you take and you cut the tops down just a bit of our tall oats and peas, and you just take the tops right off. And after you do that, you come and cut up the pieces of the tops of your peas and your oats. After you get all your plants chopped up, you take and you turn all the roots and the plants right down into the soil. This is adding organic matter back to the soil and encouraging more of our decomposers to come and our worms to come to this bed and make our soil nice and active and healthy for planting in the spring. I've turned in half the cover crop that just died back so that you can see the difference. This side, I've got all the tops of the cover crop that I cut out and I turned into the soil. You can see a little bit poking out of the top. I've left the other half of the cover crop that has died back out for you all to see. As you can see, the cold, it died back perfectly on schedule for us to use it as a source of organic matter for our spring planting. Sometimes we let our bed recharge simply by mulching it. Thanks to the mulch on our beds, the soil moisture and the temperature will stay perfectly in balance. Our soil underneath is a nice, perfect, cool temperature, and it's just an actually perfect moisture level for soil while it's resting. The mulch provides a little bit of added protection in our extreme cold and hot month of March here in Oklahoma. If we were to continually grow food and harvest it without stopping to add compost or grow cover crop, our soil would become dry and brittle and empty of nutrients. If we never mulched our bare soil, it would easily dry out or get washed away. These problems happened to Oklahoma farmers on a very large scale during the era called the Dust Bowl, when the combination of high winds and drought, which is a period of no rain, occurred. Because farming methods did not put organic matter back into the soil, and the soil was often left bare, tons of the fertile prairie soil just blew away. After the drought ended, farmers began to employ soil conservation methods on their farms to protect and build their soil. And that is what we do in our garden today. I'm here at bed 6 to show you some early spring planting. This bed is all ready. It formerly had our root crops. It had our beets and carrots and radishes. Now I have cleared all of those cool season crops and we are ready to plant our warm season. We'll be planting from seeds today. We'll be planting celery and peas, and we'll be planting onions from plants. What I've done to prepare after I cleared the bed, I have added compost, and the dirt is all perfect for germination for our seeds to sprout. When planting pea seeds, you plant them at a 1-inch depth, and then you space them about 2 inches apart. Have made some dibbles and placed our onions directly in. They are spaced about 6 to 8 inches apart. They get planted to about a depth of about 1 inch, which is about to your first knuckle on your finger. Open up the soil to about 1 inch depth, which I can check with my finger. So when we are planting celery seed, the seed depth is important. It's a little different than the peas that we planted, which had to be a lot deeper. The celery seeds themselves are a lot smaller as well.
It has been wonderful to share this lesson with you about how we care for our soil in the Bulldog Garden. When you visit the garden soon, be sure to take a look at the mulch and the cover crop. Be sure to take a moment to look closely at the soil. Have fun looking at the worms and the compost pile too. We'll see you next time, Bulldogs.